This is the Smallmouth Crush podcast. If you're a hardcore angler, you've come to the right place. This is a weekly podcast that will interview some of the top smallmouth bass anglers in North America. Travis and his guest will discuss what it takes to consistently catch big smallmouth, and you'll get a glimpse inside the mind of a trophy smallmouth angler. And now, here's your host of the Smallmouth Crush podcast, Travis Manson.
Hello, welcome to the Smallmouth Crush podcast. My name is Travis Manson. What can I say? Another week talking big smallmouth, talking with the top smallmouth anglers across the country. And we are definitely getting a lesson when it comes to putting those big brown fish in the boat, man, the meanest fish in fresh water. I'm super stoked about our next guest, this week's guest. Chris Zaldain is going to be joining us here shortly. I bet you he knows a thing or two about catching big smallmouth. We're going to find out. But before we go there, let's talk about the Reel Shot. The Reel Shot basically carries all the most wanted bass fishing tackle a Smallmouth Crush fan could ask for. Top brands like Mega Bass, Jackal, Evergreen, Z-Man, Daiwa, Shimano, Dirty Jigs, Kitex, St. Croix rods, I don't know, Berkeley, VMC. You get the point. They got a lot of tackle, same-day shipping. Huge selection. Every time you order from The Reel Shot, you help out Smallmouth Crush, the podcast, and keep this thing going. So I certainly appreciate the support. Guess what? You use Smallmouth Crush 15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. So head on over to The Reel Shot. Let them know Smallmouth Crush sent you. And let's bring on the big shooter. There he is. Chris, how you doing tonight?
What's up, Travis? Glad to be here, man.
Dude,
appreciate it, bro.
You catch them all over the place. I mean, you know how to catch them. I can't pick your style because I think you have a wide range. I bet you throw a big old glide bait, or you throw a little one of them little sneaky mega bass things you like to throw.
Yeah,
and I think we're gonna talk all about that tonight. Some people might not be familiar with you, Chris. So if you could just take a moment, kind of talk a little bit about yourself, your background, where you came from, and where you're at today, and then we'll get into the smallmouth talk.
Yeah, man. Travis, appreciate you hollering at me. I'm glad I made the top 52 cut.
That's right. That's right.
Smallmouth fishing is something that I didn't do growing up, fishing in California. I'm originally from San Jose, California. I remember, growing up in the city. You're familiar with the Philadelphia area. Mm-hmm. A lot of your listeners are from that Pittsburgh, Northeast area. Traffic. Like no fishing goes on, especially smallmouth fishing. So I kind of forced myself to learn out in California growing up via spotted bass, the cousin of the smallmouth. So they're very similar out west. But in 2012, I qualified for the Elite Series through the Opens, and I've been fishing the Elite Series ever since. So I'm going on year number 9, dude. Year number 9. So time flies. A lot of smallmouth experience. A lot of St. Lawrence River, St. Clair, been to Canada several times. All those rivers from the Mississippi River all the way east. I fished a lot of those rivers all through Minnesota, some of those landlocked lakes. Smallmouth fishing's fun, man. To have a podcast like surrounded by smallmouth, like no one does that, dude.
Sure,
I love it.
No, it's great. So you've been all over the place. Where's your favorite place to fish for smallmouth?
Man, our Elite Series schedule, every year for the last couple of years, we've been going up to the St. Lawrence River, the eastern end of Lake Ontario. And I'm sure if you ask, 52 of the top anglers, I bet you more than half of them will say that is like their favorite place to go. And no doubt it's mine. From Cape Vincent, a lot of times Trey, my wife and I, she fishes as well. She fishes the Opens. Before our tournaments start, we'll go and spend, a few days in Cape Vincent there and fish that whole east side of Lake Ontario. The river's kind of off limits for us leading up to the events, but man, there's so much smallmouth habitat on that east shore of, or not the shore, but the east end of Lake Ontario. And you got miles and miles of offshore cover, rocks, high spots, long points, sand, flats, boulders, grass, you name it, dirty water, clear water, you name it, that east end of Ontario's got it. So that is by far my favorite. And you can work on a lot of techniques on that eastern end of Lake Ontario.
Yes, Clearwater, lot to do out there. Big fish, big smallmouth. Now, I know you're no stranger to Sturgeon Bay area either. I mean, I
Yep.
grew up in Wisconsin. You have
Yep.
you have a little win over there a few
Yeah,
years back.
absolutely. Yeah, a few years back, I think it was 16 or 17. We had one of those AOY championship tournaments. It was the top 50 of the year. It was like the 10th tournament of the year where the top 50 in points were dueling it out. Angler of the Year was crowned that year. I think Hackney may have won it that year, but I think I won, or I know I won that tournament then. And it was a 3-day tournament, Smallmouth Fest, Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, Door County. That's some of the best smallmouth fishing in the world, no doubt. And you know all about it, and a lot of your listeners do too. But that is a special place as well. The time I won there, it was like, I think it was late August, maybe early September. It wasn't quite fall. It was still hot. And the fish were in bad shape. You know how those cycles work, dude. You know all about it. Your smallmouth listeners know all about it. Like these lakes, they're the best in the country. Some of these lakes we're talking about, Lake St. Clair, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, the best smallmouth fisheries in the country. But it's just like Clear Lake out in California or the Delta out in California. World-class fisheries, top 5 in the world. But sometimes it sucks. Like it's just one of those cycles where the fish will get a virus, or the bait migrations just don't line up with the bass, and you'll have a poor fishing year. I don't care how good the fishery is, you'll have a poor fishing year. And that year was a very tough year in Sturgeon Bay, and I won that tournament. I won it, throwing a finesse swim bait end of summer, early fall. A lot of guys weren't doing it then, and then my little Mega Bass Spark Shad, got the job done back then several years ago. So
yeah, I wanted to say I watched that event. I followed it. I did not expect the winning bag to come off of that technique.
Yeah,
okay?
Totally.
It shocked me. So before we end this podcast, I want to dig into that specific technique if we could. If you want to go there right now, let's go there right now.
Let's
talk to us about that. Yeah.
So finesse swim baiting. There's a couple different ways to do it. There's the shallow. We all love cruising down the bank, Ultrex on high. Ooh, there's a big black 5 or 6 pounder cruising along. Oh, there's a 3, there's 2.5 cruising up shallow. There's a big dark one right over here, and come back on game day. That fish won't bite a tube. That fish won't bite a Ned rig. That fish won't bite a drop shot. A lot of times those big ones you see shallow, love a horizontal presentation. They don't like it on the bottom. They want to be able to chase something, but slowly. And 2 lures come to mind, a spy bait and a finesse swim bait. And it just represents up north they call them minnows. Down here I'm from Texas. Here we call them shad, or bait fish, or whatever it is. So there's kind of two tiers to that whole finesse swim baiting. And there's the shallow 10 feet or less. That's all visual, flats, isolated rock piles, things like that. And then there's that real nice 20 plus feet of water. There's not a lot in between. It's either real shallow or super deep. Super deep, we use ball heads. For whatever reason, a ball-shaped head, just a round head. Those walleye guys, old school walleye guys, and they still do, use just a circular, spherical, round ball head. It's something about the way that ball head falls, and it stays real consistent along the bottom in 20, 25, 30 feet of water. I had a really good finish a couple of years ago in Lake Lanier fishing spotted bass in 45 to 50 on that 3/8 ounce ball head with a nice little spark shad doing its thing in the back, and it just kind of moves along. Bumping the bottom is the absolute key to that deep water spark shad fishing. The Kitech is real popular amongst the guys, but there's something about a spark shad. It's super, super subtle, and it drives smallmouth crazy. So bumping the bottom in 25, 30, 35 feet, real light line, 15-pound braid to an 8-pound leader, real long cast. A lot of times those real long casts out deep. And this is that technique I was using in Sturgeon Bay in Door County, Wisconsin, 25 feet of water, 30 feet of water. But it seems like there's always wind blowing on the Great Lakes. You ever notice that?
Yes.
But
I was going to say, you can still fish that deep effectively.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's literally like bombing a 3/4 ounce or a 5/8 ounce tube. when it gets like that, those conditions, I always like setting up current or upwind and having my motor back behind me, and just kind of, the wind's at my back and my boat's just kind of moving forward. I'm coming up on my waypoint, and as I'm looking down, I use that wind and just launch. A lot of times I use a 7.5 foot mega bass rod. I mean, a launcher spinning rod, 2,500 size reel or 3,000 size reel, 15-pound braid. You can get a real long cast, but I always use that to my advantage. I always keep that wind parallel. I hate when that wind's doing 45 or completely perpendicular, then your line is super bowed,
Yep.
I always like that wind behind me, whether I'm fishing that shallow swim bait or deep swim bait like we're talking here. Coming up on that waypoint. Okay, I see that waypoint coming. A lot of times I'll see that rock or boulder on my 360 show up. Bomber cast past the rocks and let that sucker fall, 3/8 ounce ball head, and it just falls nice, real nice pendulum swing. I want it to pass that waypoint, that boulder. It hits the bottom, and I'm dealing with waves. You're dealing with waves. You drop the poles, and it kind of slows you down a little bit. And as soon as that ball hits the bottom, you'll know that because that high vis braid stops moving. Just give it one pop off the bottom and just slow crank it. Just slow winding. A lot of times when it's blowing like that, and I know you experience this too, bomb cast it out there and you're near your waypoint. A lot of times that thing's pendulum swinging down, pendulum swinging, thing, it'll pop. Oh gosh, and a lot of times that's the biggest fish of the morning, of the day, is when you just kind of pendulum swing it right through that waypoint there. And if you think about it, it just looks like a minnow just cruising down. If here's the boulder here, it just looks like a little minnow just swinging down, pendulum swinging. You're always in contact with that bait, semi-slack line coming down, and a lot of times you'll feel that bite off the initial. If he doesn't bite it on the initial drop, let it hit the bottom, give it a pop, nice slow retrieve, and you just want to bump the rocks, man. Just like you're fishing 6XD out there on the Tennessee River ledges, or a deep diving crankbait, whatever it is. You want it grinding down there. Every time it hits a boulder, boom, give it a pop, and if you don't get bit off by the muscles, you're in good shape. And just keep it down along the bottom, keep that wind to your back or that wind forward, and always keep that line real nice and tight. And you'll detect every single one of those bites. Sure. Something about that finesse swim bait, and I call it, it's like new school grubbing, right? All the old school grub swimmers, some of the best smallmouth fishermen I've known, Northern California, out there in Minnesota, Table Rock area, all those guys swim grubs, right? Whether it's a smoke grub or a green pumpkin grub, same thing. Cast it out there, let it hit the bottom, just slow wind it back. But when you add the eyeballs and the gills and that real nice subtle tail, and it just looks like a minnow.
Yes, Chris. This is what I want to make this point, because some people that are listening to this, especially that northern section here of the country, there's a lot of Kitech fans, and there's nothing wrong with the Kitech. But there's times those fish see those baits more often than we think. Okay. A lot of pressure. And there's no doubt that is probably one of the sexiest looking swim baits, finesse swim baits out there. It looks
no doubt.
I love eyeballs. You know what I mean? I think there's something about that. You look at a goby, they got eyes. Everyone's got eyes down there. And when you add that, I think that's a huge deal. But I have a couple questions here on the rod action. Are you more of a medium or medium light with that technique?
With that technique, I'm more of a medium, because a lot of times, again, that wind is at your back, and with a full 3/8 ounce, I mean, you want to bomb cast it way out there. And even with that braid, no stretch braid, I like a kind of a medium. It'll be on the lighter side of medium, but it's still like a medium rod. But it's really important, selecting that 3/8 ounce ball head. I mean, there's a lot of them out there. The biggest mistake I see with finesse swim baiting, I see this all the time. Like, if I fish an open or something like that, and I see a co-angler come into my boat, and let's say that's the swim bait right there. I love a ball. Let's see here. Let's do this. If that's my little 3-inch spark shad right there, I'm gonna rig the ball head right up here, like so, where my fingertip is. I'll see more guys come in my boat with a swim bait that long, and they'll have the hook point. Here's the tail, Okay, tail, and here's the head, here's the ball head. They'll have the hook point come out like way back here. And what that does is that hook shank, like a 2-aught or 3-aught hook, big hook, that's big for a smallmouth and a 3-inch swim bait.
Yes.
You thread that bait and that hook shank, it kind of stiffens that swim bait all the way through. And when it pops out the back here, you've only got that much tail to work with, and it's just barely moving. And you're restricting. The longer that shank is on that hook, and those little details, you got to pay attention to those. For the smallmouth in ultra clear water, they know. And if they come up and look at that, and it's got this giant hook in it, and that tail is barely moving, it's going to look at it and be like, nope. I'm 6 or 7 pounds. I'm a giant smallmouth, and I know better than to bite that thing.
Yeah.
So you got to be real meticulous with your tackle, especially those ball-headed jigs, and with that 3/8 ounce ball head, it falls real nice and neat. But always go with like a size 1 or 1/0 hook that comes out maybe less than halfway through the length of that swim bait. That way, everything behind that hook is all plastic, baby, and it just moves, and that whole everything behind that hook is moving, and in turn that whole swim bait will move. And those little details matter. That little shimmy that bait, that little bait emits down there in 25 feet of water, those are the difference makers, man. So you can't be a bumpkin about it. You got to be real meticulous. Think Amart and not Bobby Lane or, something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I get it. It's full. It's really, I mean, you can have the perfect setup. You can get that swim bait rigged up perfect. You can have the right rod. You can be in the right area. But now your next goal when you're fishing these spots is concentration on that bait, visualizing what that bait's doing. You can't just be, having a conversation, looking the other way. You got to be focused on that bait. Now that 3/8 ounce head, how deep are you going to fish that? Is that kind of the norm? Do you ever go heavier?
I use 1/4 and 3/8. I never go heavier with the 3-inch spark shad. If I want to go heavier, I'm gonna have to go to 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, like football heading. It's real popular up there.
Totally different technique, though.
Totally different. You're having to work it faster. It's along the bottom. But as far as long casts, let it hit the bottom, pop, slow, reel back. That's what I call deep finesse swim baiting. 3/8 is as deep as I'll go.
Dude, I'm excited.
Dude. Love it.
Yeah, dude, I could see the passion, like for real. Like this,
I catch so many big ones on that. It's not even funny. I've caught numerous 6s on it. No matter where you go, they're gonna eat minnows. We're talking big smallmouth up north. And that 3-inch guy could be a goby, it could be a smelt, it could be a shad, it could be an alewife, it could be those rainbow smelt are all over there, and especially in that that summertime, that now time, June, July, August, going into September. I remember the first time I went to Mille Lacs in Minnesota. It was one of those AOY tournaments. Never been there ever, and I literally went out with a drop shot and a finesse swim bait with a 3/8 ounce head. And I think I weighed the first time we went there. I think I weighed or I tied with like the biggest sack of the week. And of course, Seth, was catching 25 to 26 a day. And I had one of those 26-pound bags, solely on that swimmer.
Wow.
But it's I love swim bait fishing. That's like my jam. I'll if I could force them into biting some kind of swim bait, whether it's 3 inches or 8 inches, I feel like I could do really well in a tournament doing that because I have the confidence in it. But it's all about angles. It really is. You go back to the crankbait thing. Just like Kevin has told us for decades, if you're not grinding the bottom and bumping the bottom, you're simply not going to get a bite. You'll get a bite here and there, but same thing with that swim bait. Like you said, you can't just cast it out there, hold the conversation in the back there, and expect to catch a giant. You really got to be in tune with what your line is doing, and that's real semi-slack line. And you got to know when you bump something. That's why that braid to fluorocarbon is really, really important, because when you bump a rock, that ball face, you feel it almost like roll over on a rock, and you can feel the difference between that and a smallmouth that picks it up and kind of puts slack in your line. And and the hook set's real important too. You're kind of pointing towards it, and you're just reeling. Oh, doink! There's a bite. Reel, and load that rod. Reel. It's none of this. Oh gosh, that, because then you're up here with it and doing all this and that.
Okay.
Just start reeling, man.
So
Reel,
in
reel.
my head, I'm trying to picture the angle that you're retrieving that. Is it kind of what would you call it, 45 or a little slower?
It's going to be less than
Okay.
further down than a 45. I almost like my line, my rod pointed straight down at the water. That way, not completely down, but it's about 40 degrees or whatever it is. Just down here, and that way you could just kind of watch your rod tip, and you have a real nice solid connection between your graphite rod tip and where the line there. So high vis braid, that's huge too. That's really big. You'll see a lot of the braid manufacturers now moving away from, especially in the lighter lines, the 10s, the 15s, the 20s. You'll start to see those line manufacturers get away from that moss green or that black color, and move to the yellows, the greens, the pinks, kind of that higher vis stuff. And that is super beneficial because you know what your line's doing, where it's going when that wind starts blowing that way, or the currents, the St. Lawrence River, the current sweeping it that way. You got to know, you got to have a direct line of contact with your bait, because we all know those smallmouth are very, very skittish sometimes, and fickle, and a lot of times they'll mouth it and push it. You ever watched underwater footage of smallmouth eating the crawdad? It's like soup too. They're not like smashing it most of the time. They're not smashing it, crushing it, and moving all over. Just barely suck it up and then just swim off. You got to detect those bites. Yeah, and that high vis line really helps you do that.
So the actual jig head, who makes? Is it Megabass that makes the jig head you recommend? Can you tell us if people want to pick that up? Because I'm gonna go buy some right after we get done here.
Yeah. So I've been using a couple different kinds, and now I had Santone make me one. And Santone is known as like a flipping jig, casting jig. Put a chew in and let's go catch 40 pounds of largemouth down on some mud hole somewhere. Company, but it's really cool when you partner with companies like Santone. They listen, and I've been telling them for a couple years now, dude, we gotta cater to some of those northern guys and make a sick smallmouth head. And there's one head I've been using that's similar, but we perfected it with the Santone. It's called a Lil Swimmer head. And they did a limited run, but LIL, Lil Swimmer head, and we made it specifically for those little Kitex and those little 3-inch spark sheds. It's got a nice little 1/0 hook in it. Beautiful hook. I showed it to some of those guys. I showed it to Seth. I showed it to Chris and Corey up there last year, at the end of last year, when it was just getting finished. And like, dude, that's the right hook. I mean, it is the right hook. Sure. And it's a little size 1/0, and it's a medium light wire. So again, it's real important. Long cast. You feel that bite, just start reeling, and pegs them right there every single time, man.
What colors are you going to gravitate towards in a swim bait? I mean, let's say, right now you got a bunch of dudes fired up, wanting to go get some of these swim baits and give them a try. So clear water, I want to use this technique. Which one should I be picking up?
So there's a couple. I'm thinking back on all the tournaments I've done really, really well on. The one that really stands out is the all white one. It's albino. It's all white. Sure. I've had numerous guys that fished the tournament with me. Probably one or two of the guys who are probably in the top 5 on this top 52 list have like called me or texted me and said, dude, I need some of these. I need more of these. And it's that white color. And on Tackle Warehouse and everything, it's called Huo. I call it albino, but it's called Huo. I think it's HIUO. And I've won more money on that thing than anything. It's just white. Like smallmouth like the color of white.
Absolutely.
Old white on white spinnerbait. They love white. Most of the conditions. There's one called Glow Marker. That's really cool. It's like the Japanese originally made it for like saltwater fishing, where they charge them with a flashlight and it glows. But I use it here in the States because it's like transparent. It's like a little transparent bait. One of my absolute favorites for, let's say, like New York, your Cayugas, your Oneidas, those kind of landlocked New York lakes where there's a lot of perch. the baby bass color is legit. I mean, they call it baby bass, but it looks nothing like a baby bass. It's like literally, it's like literally neon green with yellow specks and a pearl belly. Like it looks like a freaking yellow perch. 2 years ago on Lake Cayuga, I was in contention to win that tournament too on smallmouth. Smallmouth.
Crazy, dude. I mean, listen, people are like blown away by that because you can't pattern those. These fish are like
they were
chasing.
on that.
Like,
they are, dude. They are. Dude, it's like 7. How deep is it out there?
Yeah, 3,000 feet,
9,000 feet. Yeah, it's like super cold. You'll see lake trout fishermen all over through the summertime, and they say like it's like super deep, super cold all the time. Yeah. So those are and then grass lines, right? I mean, there's grass lines at Cayuga and not a lot of rock. So those are the ingredients for a roaming smallmouth. I mean, they just swim. They literally just swim. Oh, there's a group of alewives over here. Let me go mac on these for a little bit. Oh, 2 miles down the way, there's a group of smelt. Let's go eat on them for a little bit, stay there for a day or two, and then they're gone, dude. They are gone. But that particular week it was a summertime tournament, and they were relating to one particular break that I like out there, and not too far from where the other guys were doing really well too, just up on that north end. And I just found these natural rock veins that they were on 35, 40 feet of water and bouncing that thing down the bottom, and some big ones were showing up. And what's crazy is I had to pop every one of them, fizz every one of them. And I really felt like, every time I'd revisit a spot like that, 35, 40 feet of water on Lake Cayuga, it was like they were the most pristine looking bass you've ever seen. And because it's those natural glacier cut lakes, and they live out there deep, dude, 50 feet of water. And it's almost like they come out of 50 and move up. Normally we're talking about fish that move up to the bank. These things were moving up to 35, like out of 50, 60 and feeding there and then going back out to the depth. So when you find something like that in a 4-day tournament and it produces for 3 out of the 4 days, I mean, that is freaking strong, man. That's what we look for.
Yes. Chris, you just gave up so much. We could end this podcast right now, but we're not. We got more. We got more to go.
Details, bro. I love details. I love talking details.
Dude. Yeah, this was geez, where do we go from here?
Let's talk about
tell me some more tricks, man.
Yeah, dude. Okay, so the smallmouth thing, I've done seminars up north up there. So like I talked about this, I think, last week on a local podcast out in California. Smallmouth fishing is pattern fishing in general, but especially smallmouth. One, learn how to read a map. I mean, it's really simple. Like old school paper maps, yeah, they're cool to have at the room or whatever the night before, whatever. But learn how to use either your Navionics card or like I use a Lake Master card, and those things are sick, right? So with the big graphs we have and everything, I'll do like map studies like before a tournament starts or whatever it is. And after 3 days of practice, 2.5 days of practice, I kind of have a feel for the shape of the point or the shape of the structure I'm looking for. And in a nutshell, smallmouth fishing and pattern fishing is as simple as matching shapes. It's like that, that game in 4th grade we played where, the round peg goes in the round hole, or the square peg goes in the square. It's just matching shapes is all it is. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have a point, long sloping point, always good for smallmouth, especially if there's little sprinkled rocks in there or sand or whatever. Long sloping point that happens to touch the main channel of the river you're fishing or the lake you're fishing. Boom, long points, long points. Same thing for spotted bass. These long, super long points. So if you know how to read a map, this long point has got topography lines, topo lines, right? So those lines on this long sloping point will look like this, right? So the small ring here, and then a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger, and they're just really spread out through here. Really, just if you get a bite on a point that's just like perfect looking, the topo lines are all symmetrically placed, that's just like a perfect point, almost featureless. But if it's got rocks, that's cool. Sure. If you get a bite on that point, zoom out of your map. Literally, it's this easy. Zoom out of your map and just look for that exact same shaped point. Zoom out, let's say it's on the main river. just follow that main river channel, and every little point that sticks out and touches that main river channel that looks exactly like this perfect little point here, fish. And don't fish anything else. And that's how you start to develop a pattern for smallmouth fishing. Okay, he's going to be 35 feet off the end of that point. Let's only fish 35 feet off the end of these points. Oh, and then you get a bite here, and then, 2 or 3 points later, you get another bite. Oh, they're relating to those long points with the rock pile, or they're relating to those long points with the current moving along it. And it's just like you're refining that pattern over and over and over. And like you're just kind of you're always thinking, okay, just shapes. Like, okay, I remember like on the St. Lawrence River one time, I was looking for like little donut holes, little holes or voids on giant flats. So we think about flats, if you know how to read a map, your topo lines are really far apart from each other. Yes. Flats, nothing dropping, nothing real gnarly. Yep. But, on these topo maps, I could see it on the app, on my Lake Master app on my phone, like there'll be like little depressions on these massive flats, little depression. There's some grass on these flats and things. And every single spot I saw this little half moon depression, and it's very subtle. You'll miss it if you're not, sure. In key, yeah. If you're not in tune. And every single one of these little depressions, it was one of those tournaments in August, like had a giant or two, and they were shallow, like 9-10 feet. Every single time I had a depression, there was a little grass or a little bit of rock nearby. I mean, giants were swimming all over them. Mm. And it was like 100%, by the end of the week, I was able to fish all new water, and depression on this giant flat, little depression right here. There's going to be one there. Pull up, camera guy in the boat, watch this. Bam, there's one. It's 5-8, whatever it is. So really, if you're lost on, when it comes to 3 and 4 day tournaments, I was talking the other night to my friends back home in California. California fishing is all about, they fish a lot of 15 mile, 20 mile lakes and up north and back east. So those are tiny, right? Mm-hmm. And you've been to and Clear Lake, it's all about spots there. Oh, there's so-and-so caught a 10-pounder on this point, on that point. Everyone knows the points. Everyone knows this spot and that spot. There's no secrets out there because out in California, it's really, okay, I'm on this spot. Everyone knows this is a great spot. How can I get these fish to bite with this little worm or this big slim bait or whatever it is? That's like Western fishing. When you go back east, when you go up north, it's all pattern fishing. And pattern fishing starts with matching those shapes. It really does. Or taking it a step further, not just the point scenario. How about like how far back in the creek I should go? In smallmouth fishing, we're talking a lot of natural cut lakes. So a lot of them are just finger looking. There's some big giant, but still, you could still apply it here. It's, if I get a bite, quarter of a way back in the creek, and I just got in this creek. Oh, there's a bite a quarter of the way back, and there was like this little nook sticking out and a little channel swinging into that nook. Okay, cool. Let's fish the rest of the creek, stop on this spot. That spot looks good. Boom, boom, boom. We don't get any bites, halfway back to 3/4 to all the way back. No bites, just in the front, that little nook, quarter of the way back, channel swing bank. Okay, so take a snapshot with your eyes and then zoom out of that map, and then, 2 or 3 creeks down, there's like a little nook with a little channel swing. I'll bet you there's a fish on that spot right there. Then you go to that and you get a bite on that, and then you start expanding from there. It's just matching shapes. It really is. That's why you see some of the greatest fishermen that have ever tournament fished. And this is something like that, some of the guys that are first starting out have no clue about. They really don't, because it takes years and years to refine this thing. Look at Kevin. By the 4th day, he's fishing all new water. Some of these guys, they're fishing all new waters because they established a pattern over the last 4 or 5 days on the water. So by the end of the tournament, they know what to look for, and they know when they're going to get a bite. So, those 4-day tournament fishing is all about establishing those patterns. And that's especially true with smallmouth because they move so much. So you're constantly thinking, okay, there's a depression over there, or the weather changes and they get out of those little depressions I was talking about, but where do they go next? So you're constantly thinking. Never, a bit of advice is never get frustrated. We all get frustrated on the water. Let's say the pattern you've established, fails halfway through the day. Oh, crap. They're not here anymore. They're not on the specific pattern anymore. A lot of people give up at that point. But if you really think about okay, man, they were here last night, yesterday in the afternoon. We caught them here this morning. Like, where did they go and why did they go there? A lot of times it's bait or current or wind related. A lot of times they don't go far, especially if there's food in the area. They won't go far. A lot of times it's just, oh, the wind switched directions. Let's go, instead of this channel swing with a rock pile, let's go to the one on the north side where that south wind is blowing. Maybe they move to there. And that's, you're constantly thinking why. It's got to make sense why. Oh, it makes sense because the wind's blowing. So you're constantly thinking, and never never tell yourself, oh shit, it's 12:30, 1 o'clock, and we've only got 3 good ones that we caught this morning on this area, but now it's dead. Mm-hmm. I've been in that spot many times. Never give up on it. Just literally ask yourself, like, where would they go, and then start. Don't be afraid to fish new water. Really, don't be afraid to fish new water. Don't get discouraged, and just it's got to make sense. Okay, the wind's blowing from the south now. Let's go fish this other bank. I've never fished it ever in my life before, but let's go give it a shot. Ooh, there's a good one. There's another good one. Now I got 5 fish. Now I'm in contention of winning, type of thing. So, yeah, pattern fishing is ultimately the way to get it done. 1-day tournaments, you can get by with a spot. 2-day tournaments, you can get by with those tried and true spots that about on your home lakes. But there's some boys down here in Texas that fish Rayburn and even a small lake like Fork, where they'll struggle on those spots that they relied on time after time after time. And you'll hear a lot of these hammers down here in Texas, when they're catching 40-pound bags on Rayburn. Oh, I pulled over here because I've never fished it before, and it just looked good. And to them, in their mind, something looking good is like the accumulation of all the clues they gathered from the morning or the day before or the pre-fish before, or whatever it is. It looks good to them because they've gone through, the checklist, and they've gone through all the different things and struck out a lot. That's the thing.
Right.
No, we talked about those. Yeah.
No, I was just saying this is like really good advice, because for smallmouth, we all know they're there one day, gone the next, and where I mean, it's always a game with these fish. And man, this is incredible. Continue on. I got to ask you a question after you're done here.
Yeah, just one thing that you made me think about something. It's like I didn't really touch on the shallow swim bait thing, but it's literally the same thing as a deep swim bait stuff. But you can mix in a spy bait too. Whenever the fish are 10 feet or the smallmouth are 10 feet or less, finesse swim bait on an 1/8 ounce head or a spy bait works really good too on those fish. But sometimes that horizontal presentation is just what they want. They're real spooky, they're real skittish. They like moving horizontally across flats and things. But I like to ask myself, when you say smallmouth are notorious for moving, we bust a 25-pound bag one day, and the next day it's like, holy crap, where do they go? I like to ask myself, okay, I smoked 25 pounds on this stretch or this underwater point. I always kind of ask myself, is it A or B? Is it A? Do they live there? Is it just like are they living there for the summer? Are they living there for the winter? Are they living there for the spring, fall, whatever? Are they living there and I caught everyone? Or what I prefer is choice B. Are they using this spot to feed? If they're using this spot to feed, then you could rely on it for day 2, 3, and 4. All you have to do is identify when they're feeding there and why they're feeding there. What's the forage? What's the current doing? What's the wind doing? And those are the type of spots. When you find those spots and you find multiples of those, man, you can just do the little merry-go-round, rotate through them, and bam, bang one here, bang one there, bang one there. But it sucks when you bang 25 pounds and it's like, and you fish it days 2, 3, and 4, and you don't catch them at all. They just live there. They were living there that week. It was a migration stop. They were just hanging out there. You caught them the first day, the second day, or whatever it is, and you don't catch them again. They were just hanging out there. They moved so much. It was just a little stopping spot for them to migrate further down the way.
Right. So, Chris, how do you prepare for, let's say you're going to a new body of water for an event, smallmouth? What kind of, preparation are you doing before you get to the water, if any? I know a lot of guys rely on map study things. Are you that type of guy, or do you want to just kind of walk me through that?
Dude, there's so much tournament. There are so many tournament results. There are so many podcasts and YouTube videos now. I don't go too far down the rabbit hole. I'll probably spend maybe like a night when I'm in bed, just chilling. Then maybe 2 nights before I get to the lake. Let's say practice starts on a Monday. I'll get there on a Saturday, maybe that Saturday night, maybe Sunday afternoon. I'll check it out on my phone, but I'm always just on my phone. I'll literally Googling, Mississippi, Upper Mississippi River smallmouth, boom, and a YouTube video will pop up, and I'll click on that video. It could be some jackwagon,
Sure.
Middle-aged man with
Right.
has no clue, but the dude's teaching me something.
Sure.
The dude's teaching me something just by having his camera, and he's casting out the bank. Oh, there's one on the bank. Oh, I noticed that fish was in just a little current break right there on Mississippi River, and it happened to be rocks. Okay, cool. Snapshot in my head. There's fish that live on rocks this time of year. Boom. It could be, those YouTube. I'll just watch them real quick. But it could be a lot of times tournament coverage can help. But man, that tournament coverage thing, a lot of times when a 4-day tournament is won in an area or a technique, it is so freaking hard to duplicate it the following year or 2 years later or 3 years later. One, the guy who won it hammered that area, hammered it through, caught a lot of the resident fish, blah, blah, blah. But the people that come in afterwards saw exactly what he was doing, and they smoke it out, and so you got to read, you got to tweak it. But you learn from those things. The YouTube videos, you learn from them. Take it with a grain of salt, but just take note of what's going on. Past articles, I know articles are dying. Before it was like all written articles where you just sit there and you read and learn about new lakes. And then there's the map study side where I'll briefly. I don't like to get real scatterbrained before. I'd like to boot up my hummingbirds that morning, see what the wind's doing, and just kind of pick an area of the lake and just kind of let the wind and the current and water clarity and color and things just kind of tell me what's going on. But there's one super key to smallmouth fishing, no matter where I go, except for a shallow river like a Mississippi River. But even then, this applies. Dude, smallmouth love to be able to see 360 degrees around. So what I mean by that is they love underwater humps or high spots. Whenever I'm fishing a point, if it turns into a saddle and then, a point that comes down and it turns into a saddle at the end of it, a point, a high spot, and it's able to see 360 degrees around. And the only time that doesn't apply, in my opinion, it works all through the summer, June now, July, August, September. They love just being offshore and being able to ambush around, or move from high spot to high spot to high spot, because we all know they move a lot. So they love being able to see. Their visual feeders see 360 degrees around. The only time I found that's not true is when they're on the bank spawning, and they're kind of up against the bank. And a lot of times smallmouth spawn shallow, but not on the bank. They're just shallow, right? They don't like being confined to a wall. A lot of times they don't like that. They like being off the bank but shallow when they're spawning. So that was one of the biggest mistakes I made going from California to, let's say, the St. Lawrence River or St. Clair, is I like fishing a lot of the steep beautiful steep walls and things, but that I found that they don't like that stuff. They really don't. They don't like being trapped up against things. They like being free and be able to see 360 degrees. And if they're on the bank, they're not far from deep water where they can go down deep water and jam to the next spot. So always select areas that have one access to deep water, or what I prefer, a high spot off a point in the middle of nowhere. And it could be a 2-foot high spot. Sure. But they just like to sit on top of it and see up this point, going back this way, then see out, down the bank, and then down in the middle of the channel right there. And they like seeing down this bank, but they like to be able to see all the way around. So always look for just those little nubs that stick up. And again, a lot of times it's really, really subtle. But when you start to unlock the key to those little subtle spots like that, man, no one's going to touch you.
Dude, mind-blowing advice.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Good stuff. I'm not afraid to talk about it. As a matter of fact, I love talking about it. If someone can learn something from this and apply it in a tournament or something,
right.
Holler at me on social media and say, yeah, hey, dude, I learned something, and that's awesome, dude. Sure. I love it.
This has been great. Chris, how can people follow you, get a hold of you on social media?
Yeah, Instagram is what I'm most active on. I've got that link to my Facebook and Twitter. I'm on there frequently. Wow. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then the YouTube series. Last year we had a little collaboration with Bassmaster and Amazon, so that was really sick. That was fun. Learned a lot. We did 10 episodes of tournament coverage, but everyone's doing tournament coverage, right? And,
sure.
And so this year we're kind of switching it up, kind of life on the road. We're going to throw at you whatever we feel like throwing at you. My camera guy, Johnny, he's out of California, really cool dude. And he gets it. He knows what to capture. And it's always a hustle, right? I mean, you can't get by with just tournament fishing anymore. Look at what you're doing, dude. You built this awesome podcast, SmallmouthCrush. It's legit. I'm a fan of it. And you got to put yourself out there. You got to work hard and always take it one step at a time, whether you're tournament fishing or just trying to get ahead in your profession, whatever it is. One step at a time, work hard at it. When you wake up in the morning, think about it and execute, man. Execute.
Yes, man, you said it best. I seriously, Chris, appreciate you coming on. I know our viewers appreciate it. Go check out all of his stuff, man. His YouTube videos are legit. And I wish you the best of luck. And man, thank you. You're welcome back anytime, Chris.
All right, brother. Will do. Sweet.
Good information. We'll see everybody next week. And until next time, we'll see you guys on the water.
Thanks so much for listening today. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show and follow us on Instagram at SmallmouthCrush. Also, the YouTube channel, SmallmouthCrush. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and comment with a review below. And as always, until next time, we'll see you on the water.